Cybersecurity Refined and Feral, where refinement meets chaos in the digital wilderness. We will bring you perspectives from a seasoned professional and another with 5 years of experience. Join us while we discuss the challenges of our profession from multi-generational views with unique mother-daughter conversations.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Refined and Feral. I'm Cailin Sullivan.
And I'm Candy Alexander. We want to thank you for joining us in this episode, which I think will be really interesting. We bring a couple of different perspectives. And of course, our topic of today is feeling the AI peer pressure. We hear a lot of chatter going on in social media, in the business world, everywhere, right, about AI. And a lot of the messaging that I've been seeing, and Ken, I'm sure you as well, has been kind of the message of like, if you're not into AI now, you're too late. So that message really struck me. And of course, it probably accomplished what it wanted to make me panic and want to jump on the bandwagon immediately. But is that really what we want folks to do? Cailin, what are your thoughts about the social hype in regards to AI?
Yeah, I would have to say from my perspective, just because my time is so limited, that um, I kind of have been on the fringe edges of like learning about AI, but I definitely can relate to, because I don't know everything about it, I need to learn about it type of feeling. Um, but yeah, I mean, like I said, with there at my company, we're kind of looking at it as a future state. So we really haven't even dove into it either.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point. You know, we as especially cybersecurity professionals, this is something that I've said for a long time. So we need to not only learn the technology, but jump in front of the technology and understand the risks. So I know a lot of cybersecurity professionals are already stressed out that they're trying to do their day jobs, trying to learn about how to do them better and fully, grasp the tools, utilization, and all of that other stuff. And then, oh, by the way, now comes along AI. And so with marketeers in the world saying if you aren't in AI right now, you're already missing out. I kind of hyperventilate when I hear that. And I know I have been given some liberty to spend some time to do some learning in AI, right? And because it's not like it's a college course you can go and learn right now. Yes, kind of, sort of, but the way we learn in cyber technology, it's because we're on the cutting edge so often. You
Mm.
kind of immerse yourself into, like, for me, it's been the Cloud Security Alliance AI research groups. It's been LinkedIn post. It's been, anything I can find and get my hands on, podcasts like this, all really good stuff. But I have a little bit of capacity of time to spend there. I can only imagine what the pressure is for you already, at your, threshold for, sink or swim on the daily job routine. So, like, I mean, what are your thoughts there? Are you just, just saying, yeah, I'll get to it when I get to it? Are you feeling any pressure, any stress about hurry up and learn it because, oh, by the way, people are using it in your business, whether you know it or
Mm.
not? What do you
Yeah.
think?
For me personally, if there's obviously like an interesting use case, like outside of my own organization, um, it's all gauged on my interest level that I'll pay attention.
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like using it in the business, I tend to go back to basics. So asking like, okay, what are the risks? What data is being used? How is that? being used, and kind of it's more I hate to say it, it's more of a reactive type of situation for me.
Right.
But at the same time, it's okay as long as you're doing basics, right? Like risk assessments.
Well, I think a lot of folks, and that's why I'm really glad we are talking about this today. And I know in preparation, you were like, well, I'm not really comfortable because you weren't immersed in it like I have been. So, but that's the message. These are the conversations we need to get out is that there's a lot of people like you that
Mm-hmm.
they're the only security person in their company. So, how the heck am I supposed to do like vendor security questionnaires, SOC 2 compliance, support the business, go through and look at your scan reports, work on risk remediation, and now again, all the way. By the way, there's AI that's breathing down your neck. So, I I think perhaps the first thing is to just recognize that if you are in a situation like you are, to prioritize. I keep saying, and we
Mm-hmm.
keep getting because of the market hype, right? That you need to prioritize your time and attention to where the most value will occur in reducing risk. Because ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's about reducing risk in your organization. And yeah,
And helping support generate revenue. So the business is going to drive that. If the business wants to look into adopting more AI or producing AI product features, then obviously my prioritization is going to shift.
so let's hold that point because that's a really good point, right? So that comes down to you know businesses reasons for getting into AI, right? So let's hold that parking lot that for a moment, but let's talk about again some of the general use that we're hearing out there. So because now there are studies coming in that are talking about how businesses are adopting AI and what areas and all of that. And so when we look at industry trends and benchmarking, as I mentioned, there was a recent study by Harvard Business Review on how people are using Gen AI. And
Mm-hmm.
I, so I think it's interesting, right? Because the first and foremost, people are using it for personal reasons and professional support, for example. And you and I both already do this. We do it for
Mm-hmm.
this podcast. We do it for writing. Sanctioned AI use, like for example, Microsoft Copilot. That is like phenomenal to like. And we talked about this on the be nice or bossy episode where you start writing an email and it's like, oh, that could be taken a little harsh. And so,
Yeah.
Copilot, can you soften it and make it sound nice? And it does. Everybody does that, right?
Yeah.
and and that has become one of the biggest, uses of it, of course, but that also talks about shadow AI, and we won't talk about that quite yet because that's a huge risk. But in looking at the data, and not so much, well, I guess it is here. One of the things that really scares me is in 2024, therapy and companionship was number two. 2024, number one was that, generating ideas and whatever. And now uh, the therapy and companionship has come up to the number one use, which is absolutely terrifying to me.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear that, what do you think? What brings to mind for you?
Skynet.
Elaborate.
Skynet. Yeah. Um, so how it, I mean, it's terrifying because these AIs, Gen AIs are not certified therapists. They're prone to hallucination and might not be as vetted as it should be for providing
Right.
therapy or companionship. There was there was a kid that actually unalived himself because of a companion AI
Say it for what it
told you
is.
to.
He's not unalive. He committed suicide. Correct?
Sure. Yep.
I mean, it's harsh reality. But I think that that's the significance. That's why, for listeners out there, I'm sure they all feel the same way. It's terrifying because when we look at it from the mechanics of it, right, from the technology aspect and the HIPAA compliance perspective, oh my goodness. Like, how are they using Gen AI for therapy and or companionship? My goodness. I mean, talk about toxic friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the data models, where's, the data to feed those models, is that, in its own. And then, one of the fundamentals of HIPAA compliance is, kind of goes with the traceability. What's the line of custody, if you will, of your PII or PHI, right? Personal health, protected health information. So, I mean, that is just mind blowing to me. So the questions that come to mind when I just see this, Cailin, is like, one, I hope that businesses that have adopted Gen AI for therapy are doing so that is in compliance, with, the regulations, and that there are parameters. And I know there are a lot of really caring healthcare providers out there. Most, if not all, are. But you know what they say about the road to hell? It's paved with good intentions. So, that really, it terrifies me. Absolutely. Um, yeah. So I guess we'll move on from that one. But that was really scary. And I'll just rattle off some of the other, things that in 2025 it's being used for. So, number one, therapy and companionship. Two, organizing my life. Yes, kind of, sort of. And then enhanced learning. Absolutely. I absolutely love interacting personally with, my Gen AI model. And oh, by the way, it's private data. I'm not sharing my queries and prompt engineering and all of that with anybody outside. So that, again, my queries are not being fed back into the cloud. It's private to my, own instance, if you will.
Mm.
Let's see, generating code. There's some really interesting news lately about that one, which just blew my mind. I shared that on LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw that. Microsoft did a deep dive, of course, right? Guess who? On Google, and there was all kinds of like trapdoors, backdoors, and everything else in the code. So, I mean, and between that one and the first one, it's like shame on these companies that are doing that blindly, right? And I hope they aren't doing it blindly. I hope people are watching our podcast and other podcasts where they're saying, "Don't do this blindly," because you're asking for trouble. It's playing Russian roulette, truly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
Let's see. Next up is generating ideas. Fun and nonsense comes in at number 7. Which is rather humorous. I mean, but think about, like, talk about fun and humorous. Remember when you know who, and if I say her name out loud, she will respond to me right now because, you know, I use it for music. But remember when we used to say, "Hey, tell me a joke," and she would tell you dad jokes and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
sense. Improving code for pros. I thought that was interesting. Creativity and healthier living. So, really, all over the board. When you look at that list, what's interesting enough, when I look at that list, we've got code up there twice, generating or enhancing code, and then therapy. Those are like the business cases I see, which is really interesting because we go from personal use, kind of fun and no real harm done to extreme in a business environment. So that's
Mm.
like really, when you look at it from that perspective, that's terrifying. What are your thoughts in regards to that list and where it all lays for purpose of use?
I will say that like the top three, it does says say that they're like personal and professional support. That's the overall theme of it.
Yeah,
So I find it interesting too that the top three are the personal and professional support, whereas like the enhanced learning is the only one that's education and learning
yeah,
theme, and then the technical assistance and troubleshooting theme is
for the code.
5 and 8. Yeah. Um, so it seems like out of this top 10 list, most of them are for the personal and professional support, which I mean makes sense from that perspective. I don't think it makes sense from therapy and companionship, but
Mm,
I mean, I wonder if that is, I mean, obviously it ties in with societal, conditions and the environment that we're living in nowadays. Um, but yeah, really interesting stuff.
well, when we see and we will post a link to this graph because people don't understand what we're seeing here. Um, but when I see that, to your point, the top three are personal and professional use, and that would be therapy, companionship, organizing my life, and finding purpose. In other words, new use cases. Um, that's great. Again, however, make sure that the data that you're using stays in, the queries and the responses stay within your domain, your, environment. Don't push it out there to the world because, it could come back and bite you. So,
Yeah.
yeah, let's move on. So, again, clearly AI is not going anywhere. And there's been a lot of stats about that, right? It's definitely not going anywhere. It's going to only be enhanced. And then there's been some recent activity about jobs. A lot of people fear it's going to take their jobs. I, on the other hand, believe that it's just like, it's just back like at the beginning of computer use. There was a hype about computers are going to take people's jobs, and
Yep.
look what happened. I mean, it's become a necessary part of everybody's jobs, and a whole bunch of new jobs were created. And so I think
Yep.
AI is going to happen that way too. What are your thoughts in regards to jobs and that?
If anything, it's going to create new jobs. Like, yeah, there are going to be some jobs that are replaced by AI, but it's going to definitely create new jobs and new spaces for people to actually insert themselves. Anytime there's any kind of new technology that's just always a fear. To your point of when computers first came out, people were all up in arms about job loss. It's just going to shift.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. And it's fear mongering, in my opinion, the chicken littles of the world, AI
Mm-hmm.
is going to make the sky fall. No, no. All right. So, what, let's take a moment and look at when a business does adopt, some of the positive considerations of AI adoption. Of course, the first thing that everybody thinks of right away, including us, I mean, I've experienced it, is increased productivity. It's just amazing how quick you can now, write a report. You throw in the basics of what you want that report to say, and it makes it look really good. Um, so, you know, and of course, those repetitive tasks, right? And that's more ML, more machine learning, but it's still AI. Um, um, what about improved customer experience? I know a lot of organizations are leveraging AI chatbots, and they have actually for some time. Have you had any experience with them?
Yes. We did a beta test on a chatbot on our like internal or public facing documentation. And we ended up shutting it off because it was hallucinating. So we decided to not do that. Yeah.
So you want to repeat that story about the airline in, was it Canada?
What one?
It was the airline in Canada that had advertised like these really cheap tickets, and they had to. You heard about this?
No, I don't remember that.
Yes, I can't remember. It might have been Air Canada or something, but the chatbot or somehow advertised like really dirt cheap tickets, and they had to honor it because of the I went to court and everything. I think,
Mm-hmm. I
but
believe it.
I think that's the point too, right? Is that it does hallucinate. You know,
Yeah.
I so of course my company, we're all technologists and, trying to leverage the technology and, kind of drink the Kool-Aid, lemonade, whatever, before our clients do. And somebody came up with a process and, really sophisticated, interactive, AI use. It was almost like a chatbot per se to help you create some content for messaging. I sat there and argued with the chatbot for like 4 hours. And it's like, I spent more time arguing with the chatbot about its hallucinating than to just do it myself, because like it builds, anybody who's ever used, AI, excuse me, you get offered a prompt and you can build on that prompt. But if you want to go back, a couple of prompts, or it will all of a sudden like create something like, I didn't ask you to do that. Where
Mm-hmm.
did you get this information? Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's mind blowing. So I can only imagine that that's what happened with you and your
Yeah.
companies. Yeah.
Yeah. It was like quoting documentation that didn't exist and doing steps that didn't exist. And we were like, that, okay, no, no.
And
So,
we,
yeah, that would have a negative impact on customer experience. So, yeah, the hope is an improved customer experience, but we're not there yet.
yeah, I think there's two sides to that coin. And I think that's the danger of it too, right? Is that um, your organization would be held accountable because
Hmm.
it's representing your company, right? So I think
Yeah.
people need to understand that. Um, Other uses are data driven decision making. So analyzing large data sets, sure. I mean, that's computing,
Yeah.
cost
Yeah.
savings, and so on and so forth. But let's dive in because I think, marketeers do a really good job on touting the advantages of AI, which I think we should probably really think about the negative content considerations, if you will. And that is, I think people have heard, and we've done it as well, is, you decide you want to get into the AI game, right? But in order to do it right, it's going to cost you a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, like, for example, I've used this story before, real life, that organization Copilot just came out and they wanted to use it. And I'm like freaking out. It's like, well, be careful because if you just go ahead and let it go, it will be able to query any information in your environment. So, think about data governance and, defining ownerships and permissions, right? Which, I mean, that's best practice, anyways, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It all goes back to basics, man.
But I think, people, businesses, more specifically, they don't realize it's a
Mm.
high initial cost. It
Yeah.
will ramp up significantly in the beginning. Just like any new tooling, and AI is a tool, right?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So I think that That needs to be understood. A lot of organizations feel, well, I need to get into the AI game right now and I'm going to save money. Well, no, not right away anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, the other thing is that, a lot of organizations, they'll go in and jump into the AI pool and not understand that it really does take some specific technical experience.
Yeah.
And not a lot of organizations have that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Make
that's,
sure that it's implemented right and everything. Yeah.
well, it's kind of like giving, I don't want to use that analogy. It's giving somebody a pair of scissors and letting them run.
Mm-hmm.
They can fall down and they can hurt themselves, injure themselves. So, make sure that they understand the risks and ramifications of it, and make sure that they staff is trained. And it's not just tech staff either, right? It's everybody understands what the safeguards should be around AI use in an organization. Um, Integration with other systems, I think it's really important to understand how that happens. And of course, one of the best examples of that is, I'll use it again, Microsoft. Microsoft Copilot is in every facet of Office.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Which could be a risk in itself.
Well, but that's a good point. For every benefit, look to what the risk is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a business owner. I want to use it for efficiency. Okay, well, this is how I want to use it. What are the downfalls of that? Because there's no just solid benefit. There's a risk associated with every benefit in AI use. And I think, one of the biggest that people need to recognize is, again, the security and privacy concerns. Again, it goes back to what we talked about in regards to the therapy and companionship. People thought that the breach, I forgot the name of that social match platform.
Oh.
Ashley.
Ashley Madison? Yeah.
So if that was bad, think about, if you have an AI companion, what are you saying to this AI companion? And, it's like, I have a quote on LinkedIn. AI is kind of like a friend that can't keep a secret. Think about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody wants that friend. Nobody wants to talk to that friend and tell them their deepest secrets. But yet, the number one use is in regards to companionship and AI. Seriously? Think about that from a privacy concern.
Yeah. No, thank you.
And then, of course, when a lot of companies, talk about, there was a lot of chatter on LinkedIn too about AI use for screening candidates for a job position.
Yeah.
Want to talk
Yeah.
about?
Yeah. That my first concern with that is like ethical and bias concerns when it comes to AI algorithms. How are we ensuring that they're not biased?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's been studies, case studies, not advertised, published in regards to some of these and how they really easily become biased, especially in regards to uh, diversity, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
have inclusion and diversity in their screening process. And so that's really unfortunate. And so we really don't want that, of course, to happen. And then, of course, there's a whole bunch of security concerns cybersecurity concerns that I think people need to understand. We've already talked about the increased exposure potentially to your data. If you
Yeah.
don't have it set up properly, you really are expanding your attack surface.
Yeah.
You're kind of making
Yeah.
it easy for the bad guys.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of data, right? Again, the data privacy concerns with GDPR and CCPA. How the heck are you going to do the traceability when
Hmm.
you're using a Gen AI model? The data lineage is really difficult. Um, so, those are things that we need to understand and mitigate. And I'll just read off, some of these others that we're all very familiar with. We've heard it in the news. And that's model security, making sure that the models are not open to adversarial attacks. AI as an attack vector itself, right? I mean, we're seeing that all over the place with something as simple as phishing attacks, but deep fakes have been. I mean, remember that session we saw out at RSA a couple of years back? That was what, 2020? That was 5 years ago, on deep fakes and how they were able to interact. The deep fake was able to respond in regards to questions and queries from a human. So it's just amazing. And then supply chain security, especially in regards to coding, right? Like, how are you able to verify that code? So, I mean, that's huge. And then we, think about monitoring and logging, incident response, and so on and so forth. And again, just the fact, right? Again, it goes back to the skills gap. There already is a skills gap in cyber, and I've been, again, pretty fortunate to be able to go deep on this and understand as well that a lot of these issues that are being raised with AI are fundamental in nature from a security perspective. So, like, working so long in the industry, I'm able to understand, inherently as I breathe, even what some of those are in
Yeah.
regards to the skills gap. And, it's funny because we had that session with Ron Ross from NIST, and he, as I mentioned, and you now know, he is a huge advocate for systems engineering. So making sure you have input validation, right? Data.
Hmm.
Um, how are you going to validate that data? And so I think that we need to mature there from a security perspective. And I know there's a lot of really good work going on there, but for folks like you that are already doing their day job and then a ton of other stuff, how the heck can you learn this quickly? And so I guess my advice to you folks would be to sit back, take a deep breath, let the crazy, cutting edge people who like to do the research and early adopters, let them get all their bumps and bruises and figure it out, and then come into the party once the dust has settled.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, it's the only way, and it's not a bad thing either. Don't feel you're missing out. Don't have the FOMO. You
Yeah.
know, it's okay.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes. Yep. And if the business is pushing for it, that's a different story. But
let's go to that. So absolutely. So, if your business is pushing for it, how how are they approaching it? How are they, preparing for the AI adoption? Did you clearly had a specific need in mind or a specific use case in mind that you wanted to use it for, correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's obviously it always starts with identifying like the business need and the business case for it. And then, you know, working with all the different people inside the business to make it happen.
Well, the
Um,
sad thing is, though, Cailin, is a lot of businesses don't do that. A lot of
yeah,
businesses are like, I just want to we need to be in the AI game. We need to be able to have AI on our website for doing whatever. And so how are we going to do that? Just do it. Just go out and figure it out and do it. And then next thing you
yeah.
know, there's no use case other than, oops, we needed to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think enough emphasis is understanding that. And it comes down
Yeah,
to some of the really mature organizations I worked for. We had like a PMO, a program management office, where
yeah,
business come up with an idea. Well, great, bring it to the table. Identify what is it you want to do, why do you want to do it, what's it going to take to do it, and then how much value will the business get out of that. And I think that that's really good approach for identifying how to get into the AI game and why. It talks about all of that.
yeah. What advice would you have if somebody's business is literally just like, we gotta do it? Like, how would a security, compliance, engineering, should they approach that? By
The,
identifying the actual business need? Yeah,
yes, by coming out and being that 2-year old.
yeah,
Why do you want to do that? To get into the AI game. Why is that important to get in the AI game? To show we're innovative. Okay. Um, Are you willing to put X at risk? No. Okay, then let's pick a lower risk approach, right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, that type of thing. Let's go internally first before let's start a help desk chat bot internally before we put it on the externally facing website that is like spouting on these these not true comments and recommendations, right? Let's understand what we're getting into before. I mean, luckily you guys, did that. You tested it. You knew you wanted to use it, you know, and you tested it out, saw it didn't meet your expectations, so you pulled it back.
yeah.
So
It's like asking, like, hey, IT help desk, but my computer has a blue screen of death, and it's just like, set fire to the computer.
yeah, like
That'll
that.
solve the problems.
Not what you're really going for. So yeah. So I think,
Yeah,
definitely that's the first step is understanding truly what it is. And if you don't know what it is, then come up with a really introductory adoption use case.
yeah,
Something that's as low risk as you can get until you get to know it. And or another thing that I've seen done is educate the executive suite as to what other businesses are using it for. Don't,
mm,
by the way, don't necessarily show them that Harvard Business Review and drop it on their desk and say, here you go. You want to drop it on their desk, or you want to say, let's sit down and talk about it. As we did,
mm,
the top 3 things are concerning. Yeah, they sound really good and they're beneficial and will help and like efficiency and all of that stuff, but at the same turn there's a lot of risks involved with X, Y, and Z. So now you're able to provide them the knowledge that they need to make a good decision for the company without putting the company at risk. Because,
mm,
I've seen this before, and actually I've had these conversations, right? Where you go in and it's like, well, we could just do that. The CTO, CIO is going, we could just do that. And it's like, wait a minute. Let's think
yeah,
about let's think about all the interdependencies on that. And that leads to the next point, like for example, the data. What data are you going to use to train the model? Where's that data going? Is it being fed back into the public model? Is it going to be kept on site? You need to really walk through what that means, because technologists and businesses, they see the new toy come out and they're on top of it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everybody wants one until
Mm-hmm.
you find out that it's made with lead or something, that's going to be poisonous. That toy's poisonous. Don't play with the lead toy. Let's think about how to make it safe. So I think that
Yeah.
those are the types of conversations businesses, I know a lot are already having, but I fear that a lot aren't having those conversations, and that they're finding out after the fact what those risks are by accident and by
Mm.
unfortunate disfortune, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that those are some of the things that need to be taken into consideration. Um, so let's go with the last topic of whether or not to seek it outside guidance or not. I mean, when you guys went to go about doing your AI chatbot, did you seek outside assistance, or did you pull it in and you had a special team to figure it out, or how did you go about it?
Yeah, I think there was a small team within our business that was tasked with working on it.
Yeah.
They, you know, obviously they have skills in to set it up and everything. Um, so yeah, we didn't do um, like outside counsel or um, consultants. I was looking for the right word. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing too, is that a lot of organizations are afraid to bring in outside expertise, because they're afraid of, all of a sudden it going from a small project to, like a government contract or something, no pun intended. That was a bad example. Sorry. Or, going from, this little, we just want some guidance. Don't come
yeah,
in and like, jump in and take over. We just want guidance. I think, the thing is that organizations need to understand what it is that they want. Do they want somebody to come in and do a professional services, drop in, hand over the keys, once it's
yeah,
all built, or do you want somebody to come in and guide you through, the process? Like I said, kind of like somebody to come in, like you asked, right? What do you do with an organization that doesn't know what to do with them? Well, hire somebody to come in that's going to walk you through those questions, those decision points, work with
mm,
your staff, because it is such a new skill set. You can actually expedite your staff's learning curve by working with somebody who's skilled, and there's that, you're done with it. And
hmm,
I think if you're afraid of scope creep on an engagement or a project, then you're working with the wrong consultants or expertise. Really keep it
yeah,
defined and upfront. If you want just a small job, then that's great. But hold your outside resources accountable to their
hmm,
deliverables. They're getting off track, rein them in. So I think that
yeah,
those are really, really important. And lastly, let's talk a couple of minutes about some of the resources for folks in cyber specific. And of course, maybe, CTOs or, technologists, engineers, and IT folks. Some of the projects that are going on right now are absolutely phenomenal.
mm,
There's, three big ones, and then there's, some subsets of this out there. And that is, of course, the first one, and I'll talk about it, is the OWASP Gen AI Security Project, which is amazing. And that, if I'm not mistaken, and if you or any of our listeners know for sure, you can correct me. I am open to corrections, is I believe the OWASP Gen AI Security Project is a joint effort between CSA and OWASP. So you might want to do a check on that project. There's some really good stuff out there. And then Cloud Security Alliance, I've been heavily involved. Cailin, I know you were on the controls working group.
Mm-hmm.
There's some really good stuff there, especially the AI research groups. And I believe there's like three, there's or four. There's and help me remember. There's the AI organizational responsibilities.
Mm-hmm.
There's technology and risk.
Okay. Controls.
Controls, and there's one more that I am forgetting. Is that awful? I can't remember.
There are a couple of them.
Over on the Cloud Security Alliance website in the circle. So I would really advise you to go check that out. The technology and risk working group, as well as the organizational responsibilities working group, they have some really good papers out there. One talks about roles and responsibilities of AI within the organization, and they talk a lot about the chief AI officer, which they're a lot of people are pushing for that role and title. But my point is that don't get stuck on title so much as the need for the function.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, were you going to say something?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. I
Okay.
think it would be a very specific business with a very specific need in order to have a chief like AI officer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then the last one I'll mention is ISO, of course, the 42001 looks to be promising. So, whole lot of really good stuff out there. And of course, oh my goodness, how could I forget NIST, the RMF for AI, the risk management framework for AI. So lots of really good resources. And I would highly advise any of our listeners out there that want to dig deeper into AI, that just get out there, do a search and start, looking at them. There's a ton of podcasts out there that are really, really good. So we certainly hope that you found this conversation to be helpful and insightful. Yeah.
Please share your thoughts with us, either in the comments below on YouTube, LinkedIn, or feel free to email us. We would love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And of course, above all, don't forget to subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and share with your friends. And until next time, stay secure, stay refined.
And don't be afraid to get a little bit feral.